Urasama in the house. You know what? Since Urasama is in the house, let's start with his video. It did have philosophy in it, and that's always something that I'm very interested in. Make sure you take a second, hit that thumbs up button, and hit the share button. We are building a community here. We need your help to get more people interested in this show. We want as many eyes on the show as possible, because the more people we have, the more diverse of an audience we have. And the more diverse of an audience we have, the more likely we are to get things right. That's what's important here, is that we get things right. So make sure you hit that share button. Tell your friends. Tell your family. They will thank you for it. They will be like, thank you so much for leading me to tomfoolery. He has saved me from being a fake news libtard cuckold. They will say, thank you so much for bringing me to this show. So hit that share button. Hit that thumbs up button. Let's get started. We're going to get into voter fraud in just a second, but fan request, viewer request, that we start with a reaction to this video. It's only a 8-minute video, so let's get to it. It's called "That Time a Guy Tried to Build a Utopia for Mice and It All Went to Hell." Wow, okay.
Just before we get started, I do want to thank Brilliant for sponsoring this video today. To support Today I Found Out and learn more about Brilliant, go to brilliant.org/todayIfoundout and sign up for free. In 1968, an expert on animal behavior and population control called John B. Calhoun built what was essentially a utopia for mice that was purpose-built to satisfy their every need. Despite going out of his way to ensure the inhabitants of his perfect mouse society never wanted for anything, within 2 years, virtually the entire population was dead. So, what happened? Dubbed Universe 25, Calhoun's Mouse Utopia was built with the needs of its mouse inhabitants firmly in mind, and was designed to specifically cater to their every whim.
I can't imagine what a mouse utopia would be. Like, they get a lot of cheese, they get mouse wheels. Do they have like a huge like grass? Because I think mice they like grass and like lots of dirt and holes to climb into. I would really like to see how much they try to make this similar to a mouse's natural habitat, because you would think that's what would be best for mice. You would think that that's like something that would be the ideal utopia, is something similar to their natural habitat.
Containing plentiful food, water, bedding, and at least initially space, the enclosure was described as follows. A tank, 101 inches square, enclosed by walls 54 inches high. The first 37 inches of wall was structured so that the mice could climb up, but they were prevented from escaping by 17 inches of bare wall above. Each wall had 16 vertical mesh tunnels, called them stairwells, soldered to it. 4 horizontal corridors opened off each stairwell, leading to 4 nesting boxes. This means 256 boxes in total, each capable of holding 15 mice. Well versed in rodent populations from dozens of previous experiments, something that's kind of apparent when you realize that the enclosure was called Universe 25, Calhoun anticipated that his mouse paradise could reliably and, more importantly, comfortably house 3,840 mice. Before that, though, he needed to pick the proverbial Adam and Eve of his mouse Garden of Eden. Calhoun eventually settled on 4 breeding pairs of mice.
3,000 mice. Oh my goodness. Like when they described the enclosure, it didn't sound like it was that big. 3,000 mice.
specifically bred for the experiment and handpicked from the most healthy specimens from the National Institute of Health's own breeding colony. Now, before we get into discussing what happened next, we should give some background information about how this experiment came to be and what it was hoping to accomplish. Prior to creating Universe 25, Calhoun had performed a number of similar experiments with rodents that started all the way back in the 1940s. All of these ended in failure when the population either stalled or turned on itself. For example, in one experiment, Calhoun created an enclosure that could easily have housed 5,000 rats, but the eventual population never rose above 200 despite unlimited food, unlimited water, and a complete absence of any predators or any threats. Furthermore, Calhoun noticed that, again, despite ample space, his rodents would often crowd together, which resulted in a breakdown of social structure amongst the population. This unusual phenomenon led Calhoun to coin the phrase behavioral sink to describe what he felt was the inevitable collapse of any overpopulated society. Calhoun's experiments eventually caught the eye of the National Institute of Mental Health, or NIMH, who were intrigued about the observed effects of overpopulation in rodents, specifically if any of the observed phenomenon could be applied to humans. To this end, the NIMH gave Calhoun access to a small piece of land that they owned in Maryland and the funding that was needed to construct Universe 25. The stated goal of the experiment was simply to see whether a perfect society would flourish. Initially, the experiment, it proved...
What is a flourishing mouse society, though? Like, that's what I want to know. What is the end goal here? What are they hoping to accomplish? How do you know that this is somehow successful? How do you know they're happy?
Successful, and the mice lived in relative harmony, and within a year the population of 8 super healthy mice had swelled to a respectable 620 members. Great care was taken to ensure the mice were taken care of. Food and water, it was unlimited, which allowed the mice to eat or drink whenever they pleased, and there was always space and clean bedding available so females could rear young in peace and safety. Despite this, Calhoun noticed that after day 35 of the experiment, things started to go wrong. First of all, there was a noticeable drop in population growth.
Well, Ring Newton on Twitch said hello. What's happening here? So, we're going to get into voter fraud in just a moment. But on Discord, we had a request to react to this video, so we're going to start off with that, and then we'll get to the voter fraud in just a second. This is a video about somebody who tried to create a rat utopia or a mouse utopia. And I suppose there's supposed to be some sort of philosophical ideas when it comes to this. Urasama on YouTube said, I think they are hoping to accomplish a population that becomes self-sustaining and doesn't exhibit mental distress amongst each other. Okay. So I guess that makes sense. So we're hoping that the mice, as long as they populate, we assume that they're populating because they're happy. They're mating and they're having more mouse babies because they're happy. So as long as they continue to mate and continue to grow their population, we assume this is a happy mouse colony. And that's how we know whether or not we've built the correct utopia.
While initially the population of the mouse heaven had doubled every 55 days, after day 315 it doubled, according to Calhoun's notes, approximately every 145 days. This made little sense, as there was still ample space to house another 3,000 mice. In addition to a drop in population growth, Calhoun also noticed an abrupt change in behavior in both males and females. Social bonds broke down, and male mice, without a reason to defend their territory or food source, since both were plentiful, became dejected, forming cliques that randomly attacked one another for seemingly no reason. Females similarly began abandoning young or even attacked them, and slowly but surely both males and females simply stopped breeding. In the lead up to this, certain of the male mice began continually mating with whatever mouse happened to be around, be it male or female. Many of the mice also began to simply kill and eat one another despite the abundance of other food sources. Mothers also abandoned their babies. Mice would crowd together in groups of 50 or more in pens designed to hold 15 individuals, while pens with plentiful bedding sat completely empty just inches away. Most intriguing of all were a small group of males and females who withdrew themselves from mouse society altogether to live in the upper levels of the enclosure that Calhoun described as the beautiful ones. These mice did nothing but sleep, eat, and groom themselves, and this gave them noticeably smoother-looking coats, which, along with their isolation, meaning no scars from attacks, led to their nickname. They seemingly lost interest in all meaningful social bonds and refused to interact or mate. The last birth in Universe 25 took place on day 600, and from that moment on, the population it slowly dwindled. Even when the population rescinded to levels where the mice had previously flourished, they refused to breed or go back to their old way of interacting. A few months later, all of the mice were dead. Calhoun noted that although the population had survived for many months afterwards, it had effectively died on the 315th day, the day the social bonds broke down, stating, "Their spirit has died the first death. They are no longer capable of executing the more complex behaviors compatible with species survival. The species in such settings die." Calhoun saw his experiments as a warning bell for humanity.
So that's actually really interesting. This is mice that kind of lose their meaning in life, don't have much of a reason to live. They need some sort of drive, they need meaning. And when they don't have that, everything kind of goes away. This is an idea that's been talked about, especially a lot when man, I'm blanking on his name, but the Asian guy who just ran for president, when he's talking about a UBI and he's saying like, well, actually this will be really good for the community because they'll be able to invest more in the arts and be able to do things that they want to do more often. And this will create a healthier society. But some people thought, well, if they don't have to work and they have no reason to work, then I don't know that they will continue to have drive and continue to have meaning in life and will keep pushing. Like we know that people who have children and don't work, they still have meaning in life because they keep up after their children. They keep up, with their husband. They assuming it's a woman, that they try to that they try to make everybody happy, that they cook meals, like, and everybody else's happiness creates their happiness and gives them drive in life. Ring said, "By the way, I love your background." Oh, thank you so much. I actually can't stand this background. I I started off with this. It was cool at first. Over time, as the channel has grown, as we've become kind of more professional, I've wanted more and more to just get rid of all of this. So pretty soon, all of this will be gone. I am actually moving studios somewhere else, and we will have a much better background at that point than just some ratty posters and banners. And I think I got Ron Burgundy right there. Yeah, so just stuff collected over time that seemed to look cool in the back. But yeah, like you have to wonder if people are being paid just to live and they don't have to scratch and claw and strive to live. They don't have to suffer to live. Do they really have much of a purpose anymore? I've talked about this a couple of times on this show, and I don't mean to keep getting into it, but I've been kind of going through a depression myself where all of the incentive that I had in life, everything that I was building towards, everything that I wanted in life was all so close, and it was like all of my motivation for years and years, and then all of a sudden that just disappeared. And my entire reason for working, my entire reason for striving to where I've gotten to, trying to become a better person, trying to move up in the ranks at work, like, get a nicer car, get a nicer place to live, like all of these things that I accomplished eventually just kind of meant nothing to me. And I'm still trying to learn how to care about anything, care about life when my motivations are gone. The things that I loved, the things that I worked for, when those things disappear, what's the point anymore? So I definitely like kind of the idea behind this. Urasama on YouTube said, I think a big part is also they are separated from need to access their ancestral memory and instincts. Yeah. Yep. Uh, by the way, Melanie on Facebook, she said Rat Park is a much better study. Okay. Maybe we'll look into that a little bit later. Appreciate you joining us on Facebook, Melanie. Ring said on Twitch, said, I must warn you, I study sociology. So sorry if I message a lot. Hey, that's a good person to have in the community, man. Definitely hit that follow button. We are happy to have some more degrees in the audience. That's awesome. Urozama said, without instinct, their feelings that are usually assisted by need for reproduction and food, aggression, and such get confused and just end up contributing to the decay of their civilization. All right.
With his belief being that overpopulation would inevitably lead to social collapse and thus the extinction of the human race. Others have taken a less nihilistic view of his work and believe that his results are comparable to what would happen in a human society, as, after all, we are slightly more complex and self-aware creatures than mice. That said, what's often lost in Calhoun's work is what came after, in which he continued to research and tweak environmental variables to try and find ways to keep the mice from going down the extinction path, even as the population density grew. And, in fact, he had some success at this. For instance, in one case, via simply encouraging creativity in certain mice by various means. Giving them a sort of purpose here, it actually worked, with the creative mice continuing to thrive well beyond what would have otherwise been expected from the previous experiments. In the end, whatever one's opinion of whether Calhoun's work is actually relevant to humans, it's still kind of fascinating that a near-rodent utopia resulted in the mouse equivalent of the purge.
Ring on Twitch said, I personally don't believe that study has relevance to human society due to our social ability. Yeah. I don't know that comparing rats sociology to human interactions is actually a good comparison, but I still think, just for the philosophical question, I think it's a good idea. I think it's interesting to look at.